everybody's doing well. Just realized I got a mess behind me. Sorry about that. I've been cooking already this morning, making dinner. I'm making a crock pot meal with a pork loin. Well, it's kind of two pork loins, but either way. I hope everybody's doing great this Friday. TGIF. I didn't get an opportunity to see who was the first people to come in here. But I do have Melanie at the top saying good morning to Betty and Delilah. It's nice to see you. Hey, Betty from Barb. Carson, the newest member of this crazy crew we call the Coffee Club. Awesome, Sawsome. Dee's mystery obsessed rather. Rebecca, it's hard for me to see on this phone. Lorraine, it's nice to see you. Pushing up Daisy, it's nice to see you. Good morning. The Allure Lodge 5D has been doing exceptional podcasting and work. They have, and that's what this is coming. That's why 5D was on there too, because I don't want to discredit 5D's clipping work. The Lore Lodge has been from my understanding, because I really didn't hear about the Lore Lodge. Lore Lodge has quite a bit of subscribers, so I assume he's been on for some time, and he's been doing an amazing and fabulous job at breaking down information, collecting information, processing that information, and breaking it down for his audience. It is it's good, but my understanding is he doesn't really do a lot of open and active investigations. Good morning, Tammy, Yvonne, Unicorn, Indiana, Susan, Nanette, Sheena. It's nice to see you, Dawn, Little Orange Man. Oh, it's me, Jen. It's nice to see you, Sharon. Who else? I'm here. Karen, it's nice to see you. Ginger Girl, I see you. Pat, our beautiful Sonia's up in the house. Truth in Time, nice to see you. The Real Me Too, I Spy, it's nice to see you all here this morning. TD Dean, nice to see you as well. Who else do we have? Decor and More, Football Mom, Susan, Wendy, Miss Lee, Mom of 3, love it, Lisa, Mitty, Sheila, it's nice to see you. Stephanie, I hope you're doing well today, my love. Bookworm, Robin, Pink Butterfly, it's nice to see you. Aw, Tanya, Clarissa, it's nice to see you as well. It is cold here in Florida. Beautiful, sunny, hot Florida's freezing. When they said hell will freeze over, it really meant what it's... No, I'm just joking. Hope, it's nice to see you. Southern, good morning, my love. I hope you're doing well. Stacy, it's nice to see you. Brenda, Sarah with an H is up in the house. Mona, our beautiful Outer Banks. Libby, it's nice to see you. MJ, good morning. Jojo Wolf, it's nice to see you. Tina, a little bit of everything, and astrology for mystics. It's nice to see you all here this morning. We've been covering the case of Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. If I missed everybody, I see a groovy gal up in the house. If I missed you, it's a big blanket. Hey. It's nice to see everybody this morning. But 5D has really been honing in. So the Lore Lodge did some, it sounded like Miley Cyrus's brother reached out to the Lore Lodge. This is my understanding. Correct me if I'm wrong. Hey, Rev. It's nice to see you, my love. And so he doesn't typically do active and ongoing investigations. He does a lot more cold cases, which is probably why I wasn't really familiar with him, because I don't cover a whole lot of cold cases. I cover ongoing and active cases, breaking news cases, and things of that nature. So just different. So it sounds like Miley Cyrus's brother reached out to the Lore Lodge to ask them to please research this case, which is pretty interesting because those are some big names, right? And so the Lore Lodge dove into this case and actually prepared a report, from my understanding, to send off to law enforcement of his findings. During this, he was very cautious with his presentation, which I liked, but he also provided a conclusion. I'm not going over the conclusion just yet. I'm taking 5D's clip work, where I've got 2 videos, one that's 11 minutes, almost 12 minutes, and one that's a little over 17 minutes. And we are going to watch them, and we're going to have a group discussion on them because I thought it was very interesting. Now, one that I did see that we're not going to go over, but I think it's because it's kind of known right at this point, and it's the one related to whether or not Chris has friends that work for Sumner County. It was stated that he's not friends with the sheriff. But that didn't answer the actual question of whether he has friends in the sheriff's office. I do believe he does. And I do believe they used word salad when responding to those types of questioning. That does not make anybody from the outside feel very comfortable. We have to have confidence in the case. So I think that was some of the reasons why we were doubting the faith of law enforcement, is because they failed to properly answer that question that we deemed very, very important. I think it always has been very, very, very important. I also want to, before we start on our live here, I also want to give a big shout out to Gypsy. I thought she did a fabulous job last night. I thank everybody for being here. I don't know why my StreamYard is, I put it up on the big screen because I wanted to see how everything looked. And I don't know why I am so blurry on my end through StreamYard. So, I'm paying an arm and a leg for good quality StreamYard. I've updated my camera, and it's still coming in a little hazy. So I'm going to probably start trying to do a conversion over to Streamlabs or a conversion over to Restream. I'm not quite sure just yet, because both options, I'm going to have to basically rebuild the studio. So, if I'm going to do it, I want to do it right. But I just wasn't really pleased. I haven't been really pleased. That's why I come direct to you guys on YouTube now versus going through StreamYard, because I've upgraded everything and I still feel like it's not a crystal clear, image. Like, I rewatched it and Gypsy next to me was like ultra clear, and I'm fuzzy. When I put it up on the big screen, on my phone, it looks fine. On the computer, I looked at it this morning, it looks fine. But when you put it up on the TV, the larger screens, it doesn't look very good. Not for the money I'm spending to produce, these live shows. So, that's one of the reasons why I've been running like this so much. And I know I prefer having a great stream. So I've got to work on that. And I don't know how to fix it because I'm not really a techie person or anything like that. So I just wanted to tell you guys that up front. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. Actually, believe it or not, either option that I choose, whether I go with Streamlabs or Restream, it's going to actually be cost savings to the channel because I'm spending so much money on StreamYard. So I think it'll be a great, I think we'll have, I can get back on the computer again for my live shows, hopefully soon and more regular than we are doing with this. So anyways, that's just kind of some housekeeping items for each and every one of you. This has been a mystery. Sebastian's disappearance is without a doubt been a mystery, but every time we find a little tidbit of more information coming in, to me, it doesn't look good. It doesn't look good for the family he was living with, his mom and stepdad. It just doesn't look good. Guys, I don't want you to forget, I know there's not a thumbnail yet ready, but tonight is going to be our call-in show, okay? Our call-in show. This, I can tell you right now, me building this show today is going to be, it's going to be mind-blowing. And Black Hawk is going to be a big part of this show. I hope if Black Hawk gets a hold of me through Gmail, I would actually like to pull him up on the show tonight, honestly. Because there's some stuff that I really like. I was actually going to show it this morning, and I'm like, no, 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 no. This is in and of itself an entire show to discuss. So we're going to be back here, and we're going to be debating something that has been debated since the green shirt interview. Anybody can call in. Anybody will be able to call in. If they're trolls that call in, they're going to be hung up and blocked. I mean, I'm hopeful that that does not happen, because this is about a 15-year-old autistic boy, and they have their own channels, their own call-in shows, their own platforms that they can be on and voice their opinion. They don't really need to be over here. So we will be running the live show. Hopefully people are respectful of this 15-year-old boy, but you know, trash will be trash. And I do anticipate some trash, you know, rearing their ugly head. So we'll get those people off the phone very quickly and move on. If all else fails with that, then I will just open it up to bring you guys on panel. And I'll have a little more control on panel than I will on the phones. But I think, you know, things seem like they're calming down. It seems like the bad group's over there with their people and the good group's over there with their people. So I think everybody's kind of divorced fairly well through this process. And I hope that that continues to be the case, because in the grand scheme of things, people don't disrupt their shows, period. You know, we'll see. We'll see what we got going on. But that will be tonight. I want everybody that has been invested in this case to be here. There's going to be some bombshell, I think, information, and I think we're probably going to, in my opinion, I'll leave it for tonight. I'll leave it for tonight. I don't want to go. I don't want to say too much. But anyways, we're back here. This is going over the Lore Lodge, clips of the Lore Lodge. This is an 11-minute clip about missing Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers. Before we get into the clip and start talking about it, I'm going to change my settings on my phone just ever so slightly. I forgot to turn it back on, do not disturb. So give me just a second. There we go. There we go. Oh, we got some stuff going on here. Cinda gifted 5 Bullhorn Betty memberships. If you received your 5 Bullhorn Betty memberships, don't forget to tell Cinda thank you. We have Wendy being one of the newest members of our coffee club. And we have Wendy gifted 5 Bullhorn Betty memberships. So if you are received your 5 Bullhorn Betty membership from, or a Bullhorn Betty membership from Wendy, don't forget to tell her thank you. God bless you guys. Thank you guys so much. All right, so let's get the party started. I gotta flip this camera around, get you guys all set up. There we go. Woo, Lore Lodge, woo. Okay, I need clappy hands button.
To understand how all of this fits together, however, I think we need to start by laying out the complete timeline of events, beginning with Chris and Katie being stationed at the same base in December of 2015. After that, Katie filed for divorce from Seth in February of 2016 and a temporary restraining order against him in August of 2016. Meanwhile, Chris married Nina Gomez in the summer of 2016, and she became pregnant that September. Shortly after that, Nina moved home to Albuquerque, and she claims this is because Chris was not supporting her and encouraged her to get an abortion. Then, Chris was allegedly caught disposing of Nina's things in mid-April of 2017, and this was supposedly witnessed by his neighbors.
Now, I like his breakdown of this because, in all fairness, I think it at least satisfies or settles the age-old question of who was doing what with who around the time of Chris and Nina and Katie and Seth. And I really think he breaks this all down. And quite interesting that it is, because it almost implies the motive here.
Faith was born in June of 2017, after which Chris suggested that Nina move to his hometown of Hendersonville. After that move, Chris and Nina got in a fight over a text message from a female coworker of Chris's at the end of August or beginning of September 2017. And I want to be clear here that it was Chris who said it was a coworker. Chris filed a temporary...
It was when he was explaining. So again, this is kind of breaking it down. I think this is something we've all felt happened, but it really does, with the factual timeline, really implies Chris and Katie were being unbecoming of sailors.
Protective order against Nina in mid-September of 2017, but lost the attempt to get a full protective order at the beginning of October, allowing Nina to return to New Mexico and file for divorce and custody there. We also know, based on their own words, that Chris and Katie were living together at the time of Sebastian's assault by that older boy, which can only have occurred in 2017 because Sebastian was 8 at the time. Chris and Nina's divorce was finalized in August of 2018, and Chris almost immediately filed a motion to sanction Nina for allegedly not following the agreed-upon parenting plan in October of 2018. Nina then motioned for permission to relocate within the state of New Mexico on April 12th of 2019, and Chris motioned to prevent it. Possibly as a result of whatever happened during those proceedings, on August 21st of 2019, Chris was ordered by the court to take 24 hours of parenting skills classes, as well as 12 hours of high conflict behavior skill training.
High conflict behavior skill training. In 2018, he took classes, folks. He took classes and he still didn't learn a damn thing.
Which he objected to on September 3rd. So just to be clear here with the timeline, on August 21st, 2019, Chris received a court order saying he needed parenting skills classes. Chris's objection was rejected, and he informed the court of his completed courses on November 19th of 2019.
So in 2019, this man not only attended and completed parenting classes, but high conflict resolution classes.
And it seems COVID put a pause on the whole affair until Nina motioned to modify the parenting plan in April of 2021. The plan was amended in October, but there's no details on what...
Now, I'm going to back up here because I want you guys to pay attention because he's going to start rolling in, because we're in 2021 now. He's going to start rolling into 2022, okay? What did we learn that happened in 2022? We learned that around October, give or take, they were trying to get rid of Sebastian. They were trying to find another place for him to go. Shortly after they acquired that property, we all know that. We've all talked about that on this show just recently when the 5 CPS reports came to light. So I just want you guys to remember that when he starts going through this next section. Pay very close attention. Very, very close attention to what he says next. And listen to the timeline. And if you guys are preparing timelines, these are dates you're going to want to jot down.
2019, and it seems COVID put a pause on the whole affair until Nina motioned to modify the parenting plan in April of 2021. The plan was amended in October, but there's no details on what any changes...
October 2021, so a year before.
2021. The plan was amended in October, but there's no details on what any changes were or if Chris objected to them. Almost a year later, in August of 2022...
August of 2022. Now we're here. This is important. See, when we listen to this is what I talk to you guys about literally all the time, is that we hear stuff and it doesn't... Oh, hey, Michelle. It's nice to see you. Good morning, love. We hear all the time these statements made until we get more information. And then when we hear the information again, it has a whole different meaning than the first time we watched it, right? So now we know about these 5 CPS reports, and now we know that they were reaching out to do something with Sebastian as early and probably a little earlier than October. They were probably talking about it in August and in September and trying to figure out how to approach the situation, right? It just doesn't happen one day and then boom, you're looking at places to put them. You're talking about it, especially if you're married and have a significant other. You're usually throwing a bunch of stuff, or you're laying in bed at night saying, what are we going to do? You know, what are our options, right? So we need to remember, now we're in August of 2022, just a couple months, y'all. A couple months when they started making plans and approaching and physically approaching Seth about plans to remove Sebastian from his new home. Oops, oh, that didn't do that. There we go.
Any changes were, or if Chris objected to them. Almost a year later, in August of 2022, Nina switched faith from the local public school, Bosque Farms Elementary, to a Native American academy in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And it was at this point that Chris motioned to relocate Faith to Tennessee and to grant him primary custody, because apparently this was an unapproved change in schooling. Nina, on the other hand, says that she moved her to the academy because it was closer to where the other 2 children went to school, and she was trying to make the commute easier for everybody. After both sides presented their cases for why this was bad versus why this was good, it seems that the court sided with Nina yet again. Interesting little tidbit about this is that about a month after Chris motioned to get full custody of Faith, he closed on the current Proudfoot home in
Closed. Let's listen to that again.
With Nina yet again. Interesting little tidbit about this is that about a month after Chris motioned to get full custody of Faith, he closed on the current Proudfoot home in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Now, I can't say for certain, but that would suggest that he put the offer on the house in, July or August of 2022.
Wow.
Before or when he filed for custody of Faith. Not much in the court record for another year or so, but in September of 2023, Chris requested a hearing.
So nothing in the record. Okay, so now we got to go back to this, okay? Because in all fairness, let's look at this, because that's all we have with the court case. Now, we have the petitioning of the court around July, August of 2022. They would have closed on their house a month later. That's taking you to September 2022. And you have them approaching Seth to move Sebastian out of his home in October 2022. Now we're going to go back and listen to the rest of this court filing and how that is presented. But this, I think, is critical information, because I honestly believe, whether people agree with it or not, that this is part of the motive. This is all part of the motive of why Sebastian was a hindrance to them inside the home. We also learn from Gypsy just how incredibly difficult it is to handle a child that's high functioning autistic, that's going through being a teenager and hitting puberty, and how horrible that was for that child as well as the parents, and how difficult it is. I never heard about this. I met some great people at a coffee house while I was in Hendersonville, Tennessee. Actually went over to Gallatin, Tennessee to meet them. And they have also an autistic son. This autistic son was nonverbal. Over a lot of work, they've been able to work and get him to speak. And one of the things that they had enlightened me on during that is that it was a very, very difficult time for their family. It was a very, very difficult time for their son going through puberty and becoming a teenager. And then when we hear Gypsy, we know that this must be a very trying time for the family and the child that is autistic. So now we have corroboration that it must have been very, very difficult, not only for, say, Sebastian, but for both his mom and his stepfather as well. And so we heard a little bit about some of the issues that Gypsy had, some of the challenges that Gypsy had with her son having these major meltdowns. You know, he's had meltdowns before, but nothing like this. So it makes me wonder, was it getting to the point that they just, you know, they can deal with, the frustration of dealing with a minor meltdown. Having him have a major meltdown might be something more than Katie or Chris are able to handle. All right.
Though the reason for doing so is unclear. The motion was for a written, not much in the court record for another year or so, but in September of 2023, Chris requested a hearing, though the
So now they have been in the house for a full 12 months. Remember, they would have moved in a month later after August. That's what he just said, in 2022, making it September. So nothing happened until the next September, almost 12 months to the day that they moved into their home, not, give or take, but almost 12 months. Now he's petitioning the court again. Chris is for custody of Faith.
Year or so, but in September of 2023, Chris requested a hearing, though the reason for doing so is unclear. The motion was for a written report on relocation, but beyond that, there's no information. Whatever the reason for the motion, however, on November 16th of 2023, Nina was ordered to appear before the court to show cause via Zoom, and that...
So November 16th, 2023. So this is right before Sebastian's 15th birthday. Chris is petitioning the court, and we all know that that petition most likely was for Faith to come and stay with him for the summer.
Hearing was to take place on January 2nd, 2024. On December 27th, 2023, Nina was served with the same order to appear before the court on January 2nd that she had received on November 16th, 2023. And according to Nina, this whole thing with her being served those documents again was a setup to make her look crazy so that they could then, at the January 2nd hearing, file an emergency ex parte motion for modification of custody and a psychological evaluation of Nina, with the evidentiary hearing scheduled for March 5th, 2024. Before they got to that hearing, however, on February 26, 2024, Sebastian Rogers was reported missing at around 6:30 a.m. after Katie claimed she woke up and he was not in the home. Chris filed for a continuance in his custody on February 29th, and then again on March 19th, before filing a motion to seal the records of that custody case on March 20th, which you may remember the same day they appeared on Nancy Grace. Affidavits and subpoenas were thrown around for a few months after this until June 6th, when Chris filed an emergency ex parte motion, which I believe was intended to force Nina to send Faith to live with him for the summer, per their parenting plan. Nina responded the very next day with an objection, but her objection was rejected on the 10th, and she had to send Faith to stay with Chris for the summer. The most recent update to this case, per the court records, as of shooting this on July 29th, 2024, is that Chris has filed a motion to return to the status quo, and yet again sanction Nina, who currently, so far as I'm aware, has Faith. So, with all of that in mind, I want law enforcement to consider the following facts. Chris and Katie...
So, here we go. This is the meats and potatoes of what we've been listening to Lore Lodge. And so I think that this right here is ultra critical and ultra crucial. And I do agree with a lot of what he says.
So with all of that in mind, I want law enforcement to consider the following facts. Chris and Katie Proudfoot have avoided saying precisely when they met, and as we know, it's possible they met as early as December 2015. Katie accused Seth of doing many of the same things that Nina would go on to accuse Chris of doing in 2017, and followed the same legal playbook that Chris would a year later when trying to take Faith.
Wow. Like, wow. Seems very coordinated. Thank you, Lori, for the gifted Bullhorn Betty membership. If you received your gifted Bullhorn Betty membership from Lori, please don't forget to tell her thank you.
Proudfoot has been married 5 times in the military the whole time, and service members are known to sometimes marry just for the benefits. To elaborate on that, when Chris married Nina, he would receive better housing and benefits as a husband with 3 dependents, even after Nina moved back to Albuquerque, so long as she didn't divorce him. When Katie divorced Seth, she would have lost those same benefits, which would have downgraded her lifestyle. And we know that Chris married Nina around the same time that Katie kicked Seth out. We know that Nina did not move back to San Diego at any point, and that shortly after Faith was born, she moved to Hendersonville at Chris's request. And for most of this time, she stayed with Chris's mother.
So he wasn't even home when he sent her to have the baby. He was still in the military in the same place that Katie was. Very interesting. Hey, Shay, it's nice to see you.
Her in a position where she had no one around to support her if something were to go wrong with Chris or his family. In simple terms, she was as isolated as she could possibly be. At this time, Chris was still stationed and spending the majority of his time in San Diego, now without any possibility of Nina sneaking up on him, because his family could tell him if she were going to do so.
Boom. That man, I don't think, has ever been faithful to a woman that he's ever been with. And that includes the woman that he's with currently, because we learned in 2021 that he was in Alabama fooling around with a bartender and other people.
When he did return to Hendersonville to help move Nina into their apartment, a text from a female coworker, as he put it, Nina interpreted to be romantic in nature, and she accused him of cheating. Now consider that Chris was in the Navy and stationed at a base in San Diego, and Katie was in the Navy and stationed at that same base in San Diego, meaning she could be considered a female coworker.
Again, wow. Wow.
As we addressed, Chris has been extremely cagey about when he and Nina met, but I think we can triangulate it. And here's how we do that. Chris said he'd been around for half of Sebastian's life at a time when Sebastian had just turned 15, which gives us a window of 7 to 8 years, or 6 to 9 if we're being generous. Seth said that when Sebastian was assaulted, Chris and Katie were living together at the time, which is something Proudfoots have confirmed in several interviews. Seth also said that Sebastian was 8 when the assault happened, which means that it must have happened by the end of 2017. On top of that, we know that sometime between mid-July of 2017 and the end of August 2017, Chris received a text message from a female coworker that Nina interpreted as cheating. If we put all of that together, then Chris and Katie started living together before December of 2017. And based on the fact that Chris allegedly received this message at the end of August 2017, it seems very likely to me that Chris and Katie began dating before Chris even filed that TPO against Nina. We also know that after the custody grab phase...
Was he still married to Nina when Sebastian was assaulted? Was he living with Katie in an apartment when Sebastian got assaulted? I don't know.
Failed and Nina filed for divorce, Chris spent the next several years pestering her in court over every little thing and filing for primary custody multiple times. And since we know that Chris and Katie began living together at the very latest in December of 2017, we also know that Katie has been a parent in Chris's household since that point, and therefore must have some extent in this case. She must be an active participant of some kind. That is to say, at the very least, she was aware of these court proceedings. Now, if you recall that weird, vague story that Chris told from the very beginning of this episode, all of that seems to have happened sometime after the Proudfoots moved to Hendersonville, so that's probably between 2022 and 2024. They may have returned to Hendersonville as early as 2022, but that's the earliest I can confirm that they were there. In any case, when that Duchess panel asked Chris if there was a reason he wouldn't want Sebastian around his daughter, he told them, there's some things that can be spoke of, and there's some things that will not be spoke of, and personal issues inside my family are strictly that they have no bearing on this investigation. The cops are well aware of everything involving specifics, and that's quite honestly, I know this is going to sound snarky and rude, but it's really nobody's business as to that because it has no bearing on this case. Okay, and for the record, I will say this, all 3 parents have an agreement and we all understand this. That was not an answer to the question, but thankfully, Chris did tell us that all 3 parents understand this, and Seth told us that Chris didn't want Sebastian around his daughter. I would be willing to consider this as kind of a he said, she said thing, if not for the fact that Chris all but admitted to it by describing an entire incident involving the cops and family members while actively shipping Sebastian off to Seth as he's vying for custody of Faith. Just to be clear, Chris most recently began making moves to get custody of his daughter towards the end of 2023, which is around the same time that he approached Seth and suggested Sebastian move in with him. We also know that...
Actually, that's what we knew at the time of this recording with Lore Lodge. New information dates back all the way to 2022 when he moved into his house after already petitioning the court for one of the other full custodies. And this is new revelation as of in the last few weeks.
Nina's story about what happened at the airport is at least somewhat truthful because the court records show that there was a motion for a psych eval against her paired with custody changes. To my knowledge, Proudwoods actually haven't denied any of Nina's claims, though it is possible, if unlikely, that they're unaware of them. And in case Chris happens to be watching this, I'm perfectly willing to be completely wrong about you. In fact, I'd love to be, but you have some explaining to do. And finally, we know that the Proudfoots left town in the middle of the search after what has all but universally been described as a lackluster effort to find their son. And on top of that, we know that Chris has lied so very many times. Anyway, now that I've put all of that out on the table, I'm realizing how aggressively convoluted the whole thing is, and I'm just hoping that I've been able to lay it out in a way that makes sense for you. Now, for the last couple of weeks, I have been telling you guys that I have a
And then he goes into the hypothesis, but the hypothesis is not added to this clip, so I'm not going to go through the ending of that. Talk about a lot of information in just an 11-minute clip. Actually, yeah, 11-minute, 8-second clip. That was most of Lore Lodge's whole entire presentation has been much of like what he just presented here, really keying in on the facts, breaking the facts down, and putting it into an order that people can understand. If you guys have not went over to the Lore Lodge and looked at his 3 episodes related to the Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers case, I behoove you all to do that. 5D has been clipping different segments of this and putting it out there, and I really do appreciate the bite-sized pieces that 5D is doing as well. Like I said, this has been a convoluted case for quite some time. Then you add the hate channel shenanigans in it, and you got yourself a circus. There is definitely something. The reason why we're focusing on the mom and stepdad is because that's where the information is leading us and telling us we need to focus our efforts. That something happened, that they have more information than they're divulging to law enforcement, and they're divulging in the multiple interviews that they've done online and through mainstream media. This case is perplexing, and I think it'll continue to be perplexing. But there's shadiness dating all the way back to 2017 in this family. Shadiness, straight up shadiness. And I think that is the takeaway from all of this is just how shady they have been, dating back all the way back to when they were in the military stationed in San Francisco or wherever they were stationed at. I can't remember. My brain just went mushy. So I apologize if I got the wrong area in California. But we'll just say California in general, when they were stationed in California. And they've obviously kept secrets previously, I think, is another takeaway from it. Misty says, not to mention KPCP's actions, behavior since reporting Sebastian missing has been nothing but guilty actions, behaviors, in my opinion. Yes, the urgency issue is a major problem, major red flag for me. The lack of urgency. I think the other one is every time I hear a parent start saying we understand that they have other cases to attend to is also another red flag, because when you're a parent of a missing a child, you don't give a crap about anybody else's child. No offense. Not that anybody else's child is better or worse. It's just that that's how every single parent treat. Even those other parents of their missing child could care less about Sebastian Wayne Drake Rogers missing, because they have their missing child, and their missing child is the most important to them and theirs, right? So it's no disrespect, it's just the reality of the situation. So whenever you hear things like that coming up, it never sits quite right with me. You know, standing on this side of the camera and looking at these cases, it just never sits right with me. Just like in the John Benet Ramsey case, we're learning that there was an event at a mall, there was a 911 call in the house, all of which was dismissed by law enforcement, and all of which I think is very critical to her case and finding out what happened to her. So we have mistakes, we have manipulation, like why are some things not looked at with the critical eye that other things that we feel that need to be looked at, and it's usually because of the other person's ability to be conniving and manipulative and do it very well for law enforcement, where they dismiss something because it is explained in such a way that it doesn't make sense, much like what we heard with Chris when they were on Dutchess, when they were talking about the faith and why he wanted Seth to take Sebastian. He didn't want to answer it. He wanted to make it sound really bad and really cryptic for Sebastian. And the bottom line is, we don't know what happened inside that house, but we definitely know that they've been actively trying to get rid of Sebastian out of that home for a significant, and I mean a significant amount of time. There's also another one that I picked up on, and I want to watch this one. I can't remember what was in this one, that because I watched it yesterday or the day before, but I selected this one because it did have some information in it that I wanted to bring to you, but I don't remember what I was trying to it might be several different things. So this is our next video. After this video, we'll be closing down. Don't forget, this evening we have a very tantalizing topic of conversation, and I want you guys to be here. I want you guys to participate. We're going to be discussing Black Hawk 57 Magnum. I think I know it's Black Hawk. It might be 57 Magnum Black Hawk. Yes, that's exactly the channel. We're going to be discussing a clip he put together, a little skit he put together of his opinion about something. And we're going to open that up tonight for, that's going to be our topic of conversation, why we feel the way we feel about this particular photo, and what we believe this photo may be. I'm not going to tell you guys the photo just yet, but you guys can wait and see the thumbnail. I'll be doing the thumbnail as soon as this live is over, and I want you guys to sign up for it. It is going to be our first call-in show that we've had in a very, very long time. And I think it's going to be a great topic of conversation. I think all of our opinions are going to really be boiling over with this topic of conversation. So I'm kind of interested in seeing how my audience deals with a complexing question. So here's the next little clip. We're going to go over this, and then we'll be wrapped up. So we'll probably be on here for another half hour, 40 minutes, just for you guys to gauge.
One of the foremost things on mind was how demeanor just did not seem appropriate for the situation at hand. The first one I took a look at was from March 18th, conducted by creator Olivia. Emotional, but it wasn't just that. When Katie would speak, she would typically look straight ahead, around, sometimes behind the camera at Olivia, but almost never at her husband. And throughout the entire interview, she just seems kind of emotionless. Chris, on the other hand, would speak looking directly into the camera, while almost never looking at Olivia or even his own wife. And when he would express emotion, it was the wrong one. He would laugh, he would smile, he would seem almost giddy on certain occasions. And like I said, Chris and Katie almost never look at each other throughout this entire conversation. But when they do, it's just some question. And it's weird because
sorry guys, it just reconnected.
And so we went and did that.
I don't know how much. Sorry, I don't know how much was lost there. I just had a reconnection request, so I'm just going to back up just a little bit.
Sebastian disappeared, she paused, looked at Chris, and then says, we went and picked up the niece. Yeah, I got a call and asked to use calling into a show. They chose not to in most interviews. Their video had that Olivia was the first one. I was alerted to an earlier one by the Sebastian Rogers subreddit, one conducted by WSMV News on the 5th of March, where the Proudfoots had largely appeared emotionless during their interviews with Nancy Grace and Chronicles of Olivia. In this one, for the news, Katie at least looked much more the part of the scared mother that you would expect to see. Her voice trembles and she noticeably rocks back and forth as she speaks about the incident. And this is something that I then went back to look for in other videos. And I found that in the Nancy Grace interview, the angle that she's sitting at makes it a little too hard to tell if she's moving back and forth. But in terms of overall movement, Katie remains extremely still in that interview, like very still. In the Chronicles of Olivia one, however, I did catch a gentle yet perceptible rocking motion on a few occasions. But that WSMV News video is very heavily edited, and the Proudfoots are really only shown on screen for a little over a minute. So
we have the full one. I guess he didn't have the full one at the time he did this, but the only time we did see any type of this emotion was this interview, and honestly, this interview alone.
There's not, you can't from it. Now, I'm not a behavioral expert, and the most I can say is that I've gone and watched behavioral experts talk about these interviews, but I have not gone through enough analysis yet, so I'll get to those in the part 3 of this series. But what I will say is that, in addition to strange demeanor displayed in these videos, some of the things that Katie said about the day before Sebastian disappeared struck me as odd. And in some cases, things were inconsistent between appearances. The first instance that caught my attention was in which Katie Proudfoot described the events of the morning before Sebastian went missing. And this was beginning around 50 seconds into that interview with Chronicles of Olivia. Katie tells Olivia, we got up and, fun fact, I made breakfast that morning. We had a good time, we were laughing, we were joking, and he talked to the family on the phone during breakfast to brag. Aside from the choice of words being a little strange, it struck me as odd making breakfast.
Well, I think a little odd. I will tell you guys this. It seems to me that details that were added are added for a purpose. We don't know what that purpose is yet because we don't know to the extent of what we're dealing with here. I have my gut feelings, but my gut feelings doesn't mean that I'm accurate or correct. It's just my gut feelings. It's my instinct. It's my observation of the facts. It's my observation of the work that I've done on this case. And it's leading me down a darker path. But in the grand scheme of things, we truly don't know what happened. Why? Because we don't know where Sebastian is. If we knew where Sebastian was, then we would know what was really going on here. So I still don't understand why the bulbs were missing in the garage light, in my opinion. If you were gonna go up there to remove the bulbs being burnt out, you would have taken new bulbs up to replace them with. Yeah, or taken only one bulb out to go make sure you get the right bulb from the store, you know, but floodlights are pretty easy. But it's the other outside lights, you know, they take different type of bulbs. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. I'm trying to find innocent ways to explain certain things away. But I don't see somebody taking all the bulbs out to find out what bulb they need. Usually, if you don't know what bulb it takes, you go up there and remove at least one bulb and take it to the store and get the however many bulbs you need to be replaced, right? So no, Dora says no security camera suspicion for a lady who works for a security company. Yeah, but you know, even with the what about the security system? I know for a fact there was a security system inside that home because even the listing photos, the home that they purchased had an ADT sign on the outside of that home. And I would think that the motherboard would at least be able to say which doors opened at what time. You know, just my opinion. there's a box somewhere, and it usually has a lock on it because nobody can get into it if you have the key. I mean, we always left the key attached to the box, which defeated the purpose of locking it. But we were so terrified of losing the key that we just, left the key in the key box. It wasn't something that you could just open up. I mean, you needed to have a key to get into this box. So I'd have to think ADT is much similar to to all the systems that I've been experienced with, because they all have a box, they all have a motherboard where all the lines kind of come into inside the home. So we know that there was at least an ADT system inside the home at the time because they purchased the house with the ADT system in it. I don't know, but this is definitely interesting.
If it were just her and Sebastian in the house, at no point has she ever talked about Sebastian liking to cook, who else would have made breakfast that morning? Details such as this can be evidence of a fabrication, though not always, the responses. Someone who gives a very specific detail amongst a sea of vague answers, however, should be viewed with a little bit of suspicion. The other strange part was her saying that Sebastian had called his family members to brag, as if that was just something kids normally do on a Sunday morning. And even if it were something that kids normally do on a Sunday morning, which in my experience it wasn't, what was he bragging about? And while that comment about bragging didn't appear in the WSMV or Nancy Grace interviews, it did appear in a March 17th interview hosted by a YouTube creator called Duchess and her panel. In that appearance, Katie said much the same thing that she had said to Olivia, telling the panel, "Sunday morning we got up and I made a fun breakfast for us. Spaghetti pancakes. Google it, y'all." Once again, just weird phrasing under the circumstances. And also, who tells somebody to Google a recipe while talking about the missing son? Ashton had been missing for a solid 3 weeks, and she's talking about spaghetti pancakes and bragging about how she made breakfast. In any case, she continued, saying, "We FaceTime family while we were eating so he could brag, because that's something he likes to do, and we were laughing and joking on FaceTime and having a good time. I do want to say, I understand that Sebastian is on the spectrum, and maybe this calling family to brag thing is something that he likes to do, but in multiple interviews, Chris Proudfoot said that his son was kind of struggled speaking to adults, even family members. But after this, she said, "We got a call to go and pick up our niece," which matches what she told Olivia in the interview that was released the day following this. I will admit that the phrasing here of who was being called, who was going to pick up the niece, whose niece it was, and who all was actually there along for the ride that day did send me down a rabbit hole trying to figure out, if there were any inconsistencies here, but it ultimately led nowhere. At least
there were inconsistencies there, because we've got Aunt Melissa basically saying that she is the one that grabbed her niece and met other family members. So unless I read her post wrong, it seemed to me that Aunt Melissa was basically saying she's the one that picked up a niece. We have Dara later saying that Katie came by for a few moments with Sebastian and her niece. So I'm very, very confused as to what truly did happen and who picked up who.
Not in relation to the niece, but as I sifted through more interviews, I came across further inconsistencies in the narrative given by the Proudfoots. One of these was with regard to what happened between 9 p.m. when Katie told Sebastian to go to bed and midnight when Katie herself went to bed. According to the first version of the story given by Katie in the interviews from March 3rd, 5th, and 17th, she sent Sebastian to bed at 9 p.m. and that was it. Other interviews, however, add a detail. In something in his room, because about an hour later I heard some noise and I was like, "I don't care what you're doing in there, but go to sleep." It's not proof of anything that this only appears on the 18th, but I do wonder why she would not include that detail in previous conversations. And that chronicle.
And remember, that detail was added almost a month after this child disappeared.
The Olivia interview is much shorter and much less in-depth than either of the ones with Duchess. So I'm curious why it is that she gave 3 interviews, not mentioning any hearing a sound at 10 p.m. and then she remembers it. And in another interview on the 20th, this time with the YouTube creator Sally Stories World, she reiterated that statement with only a minor change to the verbiage. Instead of "go to sleep," it was "you're supposed to go to sleep," which would be absolutely no problem if not for the interview with Nancy Grace 5 days later. You see, Nancy asked specifically about what Katie described to her as a thud heard around 10 p.m., saying, "You said, look, I don't care what you're doing in there, go to bed, is that right?" And this time, Katie said that her exact words were, "Bubba, did you fall out of the bed?" And he said, "No, ma'am." And I said, "Well, whatever you're doing in there, knock it off and go to sleep." While I'm not going to say that this is what happened, it does almost seem like the story told by the Proudfoots changes as public opinion shifts. Initially,
that has been something we've noticed on this show for quite some time. It's something I think everybody has talked about, that their story was changing depending on what was being posted on Facebook, Reddit, and Twitter.
He just went to bed around 9, but then we have this additional detail about a thud heard around 10 p.m. And the thing is, people did not react well in the chats and the comments section to the fact that after hearing this thud from her autistic son, Katie did not go check on the boy. So then they go on Crime Stories on the 25th, and this time it's not just that she heard a thud, and it's not just that she said, keep it quiet. It's also that she asked if he was okay first, and that he responded to her. So she wouldn't need to check on him because he was okay. I will say, in another interview, the excuse that she gave for not going to check on him at all that night is that he was a teenage boy and, you don't want to accidentally walk in on anything, as if knocking on a door is not an option. That said, in her defense, my little brother is on the spectrum in what appears to me to be at least a similar way to Sebastian, and I was asking my dad about it, and he did tell me that if he heard a thud from Liam's room, he wasn't going to think anything of it. So like I said, it's possible that her story was shifting with public opinion, but I also think that maybe public opinion was harping on the wrong thing there, because again, Sebastian's 15, he's not gonna.
I think the difference is that he has fluid on the brain that could be lethal if he hits his head.
Hurt himself falling off a bed, probably. But in any case, this was not the only thing that changed between those early interviews and the Nancy Grace appearance. Because the nature of what Katie was actually up to in those 3 hours before Sebastian went to bed and she went to bed is pretty unclear. In the interview from the 3rd, Duchess, speaking to Katie, said, "You fell asleep on the couch about 10 o'clock, but you said that Sebastian went to bed at 9 p.m. And then you got up off the couch and you went to bed, and you said that was around midnight." And rather than allowing Katie to answer the question that she had just been directly asked, Chris cut in to explain what happened. He began saying, "There's actually a piece of, so to make something very crystal clear, so that way there's transparency across the board, me and the mom were on the phone at 9:43 or 9:46 in the evening. We stayed on the phone for quite some time." And this was followed by the unprompted information that the call logs have been verified by all the police departments, TBI included, even though it appears nobody had asked.
Exactly. This is what I attribute to trying to fix issues that haven't yet arisen. I think, when parents are embroiled in something like this, they don't know what's going to be released to the public. And I think in their haste to get in front of the issues that they see, they start doing damage control to get in front of those issues. And that damage control is creating more issues, just my opinion. So, what's going on here? By the way, she hopped up on the last little segment we did, so I thought she might want to say hi to everybody. Say hi. Say hi to Lila. Yeah, I just love my mommy, and I'm so bored here while she's talking on her live, so I gotta jump in her lap. She's doing good, and she's got a beautiful little pink dress on. Aww, I need a baby. We just needed a little break from the lower lodge, just a little bit. Okay, let's get back. We're going to be wrapping up in just a few moments.
So far as I can tell, this is the first time that anybody had told this part of the story to the media, so I just don't understand the need for a disclaimer there, as if it was a question that he had been asked on other interviews. But he continued, saying, "We stayed on the phone. It was very lengthy. Mom did slightly start falling asleep while she was on the couch. I said, 'Hey, you need to wake up, put the dogs up.' And finally, Chris said, 'Now, mind you, that was right around midnight, just before midnight or right around midnight.' So in this version, Katie got on the phone around 9:45 p.m. and then began to nod off around midnight. In the March 17th interview, the story is much the same, with Duchess asking Katie to walk me through exactly what transpired during that time before you went to bed at midnight. And again, I want to emphasize was walk me through exactly what transpired, okay? Because this is important. Katie told the panel that she and Chris usually talked at night and that Katie frequently started to fall asleep before they had hung up. And Chris would tell her, wake up, you got to go to bed, in this case, around midnight. From there, she says she got up and put the puppies up before turning in for the night. And then the next time I could find this period being discussed was during that Nancy Grace interview on the 25th, in which Nancy asked Katie what she was doing between 9 p.m. and midnight. And this time, Katie replied, I had been reading a chapter that I needed to, and I had been talking to my husband on the phone. And this was a detail that she had not mentioned prior. And as I said, Duchess asked her to describe exactly what transpired. So where did this detail come from, and why was it not present a week earlier? But Katie elaborated, I was falling asleep on him, so that's when he told me it was around midnight. He told me to go ahead and put the dogs up and go to bed, and that's what I did. Later in that same interview, Nancy would ask her to clarify what she was reading a chapter for. She said for school, but what? And she said that it was for a business administration course at DeVry. And along with the evolving details of that night, another thing that caught my eye was that phrasing of put the dogs up. It's weird because in that interview with Duchess and her panel from the 17th, Katie had told the panel that when Sebastian gets up to get snacks in the middle of the night, the dogs don't bark at him because he shushes them. So what is meant by put the dogs up? In order for him to shush them, he would have to walk past them. And according to Chris and Katie Proudfoot, in every interview where they discussed it, Sebastian's room was on the ground floor because they live in a ranch-style home that has a bonus room above the garage. And again, the reason that this is a problem is because in all of the interviews where the Proudfoots talk about the layout of the home, they tell everybody that Sebastian's room is on the south side of the home, and that the bonus room over the garage, well, that would be on the north side of the home. So if the dogs were being put up, that would imply that they were being put up in the bonus room. But Sebastian doesn't pass the bonus room to get...
I think she does explain that, and I don't think the bonus room, the upstairs, the half story is where she puts them. She says she puts them right off of, I think, the laundry room, which is downstairs. So I'm not sure where this information comes from. That's not my understanding.
Get to the kitchen. So what's meant by put the dogs up? I'll be honest, this could be a total nothing burger. It was just, she kept saying it every single time. It's one of the only consistent things she says in these interviews.
Interesting.
And it makes no sense given the layout of the house as they've described it. They say that Sebastian has to walk past the dogs to get to the kitchen, but they also say put the dogs up. I know I'm repeating myself here. It's weird. Of course, none of this is really a smoking gun, but it is, in my opinion, enough to question the reliability of the stories being told, especially if other factors of the situation are considered, such as the manner in which Chris conducted himself during interviews. Throughout the appearances made by the Proudfoots, one thing I noticed is that Chris very much seemed to be in control of the narrative they presented, and he was the one fielding most of the questions. But then upon closer inspection, I noticed that he also frequently avoided answering questions. He would say something that would sound almost like an answer, but it would avoid the substance of what he was being asked. Now, Katie, it seems, did this too, but there was really only one instance that stuck out to me, and that was from the March 17th interview. I believe it was Duchess, but it might have been another member of the panel who asked, how many pairs of shoes does Sebastian have? Katie answered, saying, I'm not going to tell you how many shoes he has, but I will say that all the shoes he has are accounted for. Beyond hiding some form of severe neglect, I cannot fathom a reason to completely withhold this information. While I could understand not giving an exact number because any deviation from that given number could engender suspicion from the internet, I don't understand not at least giving an estimation, like, oh, he's got about half a dozen pairs, he has about 4 pairs, he has about a dozen pairs. But then, after one of the panelists, named Crystal, said that she didn't quite hear Katie, Chris clarified that she said she would not divulge how many pairs of shoes she has, but law enforcement has accounted for every pair of shoes. And Katie then, without prompting or missing a beat, followed that up with what to me sounds like a correction, when she said, "I have accounted for all of his shoes." Now, personally, I feel like the panel probably should have followed up on that, but they didn't, and Katie once again claimed that all of his shoes are still accounted for inside the house still during their appearance with Nancy Grace. Now, during that...
I think it's because we all believe he has 3 pairs of shoes. And I'm starting to believe he does not have 3 pairs of shoes, but rather 2 pairs of shoes. Because if you listen to how Seth talks about the pairs of shoes, you hear him say he had his old pair of shoes that he outgrew, the new pair of tennis shoes his mother purchased him, and the pair of boots that his dad purchased him. That implies he's not wearing that 3rd pair because they were old. So I don't know how many people only have 2 pairs of shoes. Could this be attributed to his autism? Or is this something more? Like, why would a mom not buy her kid shoes? You know, 1 pair of tennis shoes and 1 pair of boots? But you need to listen to the description of those shoes, and you'll hear that one of those shoes was the old pair.
That interview, as well as several others, Chris avoided, refused, or simply failed to answer his questions, and in some cases for reasons that I just find utterly bizarre. The first one I want to address came when Nancy was asking about the make, model, and year of the cars driven by the couple, and Katie answered that she drove a 2017 Infiniti SUV. Chris, on the other hand, simply said that he drove a diesel truck, specifically a Chevy, and did not give a year. So Nancy followed up and said, well, what was a year? And Chris said he didn't know off of his head, but he thought it was probably a 2021 model. Now, this wouldn't always strike me as odd, but in this case, Chris had given extremely specific answers earlier in this very interview, as well as in an early interview from March 3rd, again with Duchess. Now recall, in that March 3rd interview with Duchess, he was able to tell her 2 very specific...
You're frozen? I don't know why you'd be frozen. Let me try it again.
...times that he may have gotten onto the phone with his wife, 9:43 and 9:46 p.m. And you know, most people under those circumstances would say around 9:45. And then earlier in that Crime Stories interview, he had told Nancy Grace that the time from his doorstep to his job site in Memphis was exactly 3 hours and 37 minutes. You know, leaving aside the fact that travel times are almost never consistent down to the minute across distances the 229 miles between Stafford Court and St. Jude's in Memphis, it's pretty hard for me to believe that. One big reason for that is that Chris works in construction, which means that the specifications for his work vehicle are going to be extremely important to him. When purchasing a truck, he probably compared different brands and different model years and specifically chose 2021, especially considering that it seems like he's not struggling with money. That's also something I'm going to get to in part 3 because I have no idea where all of this man's money is coming from. And in addition to that bit, while anecdotal, I can't think of a single person I know who could not tell you the year of their primary vehicle. Aiden, what year?
Exactly. You know why? Because you got to register your car, got to pay the freaking registration fee, especially when you have multiple cars. You got to know which registration sticker goes on which cars because they typically send you the registration and the sticker all in the same package if you have multiple vehicles. So the idea that somebody doesn't know the year of their vehicle, let this poll here in chat. We got 560 people in chat right now. How many of you know what year your car is without having to go look? Raise your hand. I'm raising my hand up. One if you know what year your car is without looking for it. 2, you do not. I mean, I do believe there may be a woman out there that may, you know, husband may take care of all the billing and vice versa. I think. Okay, so who is that? True Friends doesn't know the year of her car. Steve doesn't know the year of the... Okay, why? I guess for those 2 people that don't know the year of your car, why don't you know the year of your car? Does somebody pay your bills for you? Like a significant other? Do they handle all the stuff? Or is it your significant other that buys you your vehicle and you just drive what they give you? I mean, I'm asking because... I know what year all of my vehicles are. Okay, no car. Okay, that makes sense. Good morning, good morning. So, yeah, I think for the majority of the people out there, they know what their car is. And I'd have to think that what the Lore Lodge was saying about, taking your time and looking in and reviewing the cars. Yes, I don't know if there's ever, because I mean, think about it. Even when you go to the mechanic shop, even when you go to get the oil change, what do they ask you? What's the year, make, and model of your car? How could you not know the year, make, and model of your car? They even ask you how many liters it is. Like, it's not something that you just don't really know, in my opinion. It's hard to say I don't know. So just FYI.
Here's your truck.
1989.
What year is your Camaro?
2010.
Amanda, what year is my Altima?
2020.
What year is my Jeep?
2014.
I think make my point. I think Chris knows what year his car was made. In the interview, Nancy didn't say anything that would suggest she caught this and kind of had the same thought, but the look on her face definitely suggested that. So she carried on to confirm where the cars were that night.
Okay, so I think that was the end of that. Oh, yeah, that was the end of that one. Okay, so let me make sure I stop it so it doesn't go to the next one. Okay. So there you guys have it. That's kind of the presentation. I think Delilah needs to go potty because she's just giving me the look of I need to go potty. And so we're going to take her to go potty. I hope you guys got some insight about that. It's pretty interesting because, like I say, when we get new information, some of the stuff we watched previously, we forget about, right? And now that we go back and listen to it, look how much more this makes us think and gets our brains moving, especially in light of the very first video that we went over about the timeline of events that happened in Chris and Katie's life with Seth, with Nina. That was super important. It didn't mean a whole lot to us when this Lore Lodge had released that information. But now, in light of 5 CPS reports and realizing that they've been trying to get rid of their son since October of 2022, it really puts a big magnifying glass on all those events that happened in the past that Chris wants us, it has nothing to do with this investigation. To me, I truly believe this is part of the motive. That all of these issues, whether this was pre-planned or not, I think all of the stress, if it wasn't pre-planned, all of the stress from all of this going on for all this time and trying to get faith and you don't know, Chris could be screaming at Katie saying it's all your son's fault, it's all your fault why I can't get my daughter. She might be being blamed for all this, her son might be being blamed for all of this, and after 2 years of being blamed for all of it, there is just a factor in there, especially if he's having some unnecessary outbursts because of puberty and other things going on in his life. We don't know. We will never know what went on, what truly went on inside or outside of that home. From this point, it will all be speculative. Even when law enforcement brings it up, we don't have a smoking gun here. So the majority of this case, if it's brought, whether it's a custody issue or something worse, this is going to be a lot of circumstantial evidence is going to be used in this case. And I want to remind people, circumstantial evidence is still evidence. Okay? It is still evidence. All right, guys, you take care. Rock it out with your coffee beans out. Don't forget to be back here. I will be dropping the thumbnail and setting up the live here shortly. We're going to have our first call in live in a really long time on a new number. So if you have the old Bullhorn Betty line saved in your phone, delete it because there will be a new line, a new number coming out today. And we're going to have a topic of conversation that has been a debate amongst many people since the green shirt interview. All right, guys, take care, and we'll see you soon.